What's up everybody, welcome to my first tutorial about learning Max Payne as a speedrun. Today we're going to be covering basic movement and tricks that are used throughout the run. And these are going to be essential into learning how to speedrun Max Payne 1. Alright, so first thing I want to note is that I'm actually using DxTory. And I have this box down here. Check this, as I'm going to limit the video FPS to 30 frames. There's a very specific reason why I do that. There's a trick that is used throughout Max Payne 1 known as super jumping, and it is very, very specific in timing. Playing at 60 FPS, super jumps are possible, but they're much harder to do. By limiting the game to 30 frames, it makes this trick a lot easier to accomplish and allows you to utilize it throughout the run, which beats playing at the faster 60 frames. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into the tutorial here, and I will explain some basic concepts of how this game actually works. So first things first, I'm going to teach you guys how to super jump. In order to super jump, you're going to need a one-handed weapon, such as the Beretta that I'm holding, that Max is holding now, and then you're also going to need a two-handed weapon, such as the pump shotgun. And basically what's going to happen is that when you switch between weapons, you'll hear almost a little click as Max switches weapons. And what you want to do is you want to hit the spacebar, or whatever your key for jumping is, about 1/3 of a second after Max switches weapons. Now, the only way that the super jump can work is that you do in fact switch between a one-handed to two-handed weapon. So for instance, you could even do this with the lead pipe, and switching from the lead pipe into the shotgun here. That's the basic rule of thumb, switching from one-handed to two-handed. And all you want to do, let's see if I can get it. And there it is. That's the first super jump. And as you can see, even, I've practiced these jumps forever, and it's still, the precision you need to get it, you won't get lucky 100% of the time, and it does take some practice. And also, an important thing to note about super jumps, let's see if I can get one more. There it is. But an important thing to note is that when you jump straight up, if Max is not moving and you jump straight up, you see him do this kind of squat downward and then jump upward. And you can see as I try to switch weapons and jump, how Max holds the weapon until we complete the jump, and then he swaps afterwards. Alright, so this is what you don't want to do in a super jump, is get that squat downward and that late switch. So the way you counteract that, if you are at a standstill position, is that as you jump, you press W or some other movement key to get Max to do a quicker jump, and he jumps to the side or forward. And you don't want to do that because you'll roll sideways, but what you should note is that jumping from a standstill, you're going to want to hold the movement key forward. to get Max to do that quick little hop forward like that. And then you can get your super jumps a lot easier. And then, as I said, switching from the Beretta to the lead pipe, you will never get this super jump because it's a one-handed to a one-handed weapon. We can switch from the lead pipe to the shotgun, however, or vice versa. You can go back and forth. So you have to be cognizant and aware at all times during the run what weapons you have out, what weapons you're switching to, in order to make sure that you're going to get these jumps to work. And there is an interesting little glitch. I'm going to go ahead and give myself a whole arsenal of weapons here. What's interesting to note is that you can, the way I learned it was that I would only switch between shotguns and pistols. Like shotgun, the jackhammer can switch to the deagle can switch to the jackhammer, so on and so forth. But what you have to be aware of is that there's a third shotgun here, the sawed-off, that is technically a one-hand weapon. So you won't be able to jump from the deagle to the sawed-off. It just won't happen. And there's an interesting glitch if you're constantly switching and swapping in between weapons, or sometimes you have to be very aware of what is actually highlighted at the top of the screen. Sometimes you'll think you'll be on the pump shotgun. For instance, in this situation, I would hit, the number 3 key twice, and I would expect to be on pump shotgun. But there is a weird glitch in the game where your weapon selection can be offset, and you'll actually be highlighted on the sawed-off, and you won't be able to complete the jumps that you want to do. And that really matters for jumps that are very crowded with enemies, and you are relying on getting the super jump within the first try or two. Alright, so once we practice the super jump a little bit more, there it is. I want to talk to you about basic movement in this game. I'll actually show you. So I have bullet time only tied to my right mouse. Bullet time combo is essentially the slow down shoot dodge that Max does, and I have that tied to shift, which we'll never actually use. In the speedrun sense, you will never really do a bullet time combo. And the bullet time combo is moving like this, for instance. You will not see this in the speedrun at all. Obviously, when you're going in real time, this takes up a significant amount of time and provides very little benefit to you. So that's why I have it independently, that I can jump forward, roll to the side, without having to rely on this shoot dodge. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So we're just going to run to the next area. And let's see if I can get this super jump over this wall here just to look fancy about it. Nope. There it is. Alright, so one thing I want to show you guys, I'm going to turn on God mode so I can display this a little bit, is that the enemies in this game, and when they fire at you, it's based off of a type of probability, as far as what is the probability that the bullets will hit Max. So when you're playing the game even casually, or when you're trying to go quick, it would make sense to not have bullets hit Max. And the game is designed for the way to avoid bullets the easiest is to do this shoot dodge right here. But since we've already rolled that out, we don't want to be doing this at every encounter. There's got to be a better way to navigate through enemies quickly without losing too much time. So what I'll show you here is that, for instance, Max standing still while an enemy fires at them. You can see the flare from his pistol. You can see the blood from Max. It's a pretty high percentage that standing still, Max is going to absorb that bullet. Alright, and now we can mitigate this a little bit. Let's try moving side to side. And you'll see that even though I have 3 enemies surrounding me, the probability of Max getting hit is much lower, even though I just took a hit there. We see that we're not taking a lot of bullets anymore. We actually got this guy to take some friendly fire there. So this is an effective way in the speedrun, just by using simple strafing to avoid enemy fire. And also note that this guy has a pump shotgun here, and the fire rate, for instance, once you get used to it, he fires his round and then he has to wait to get another round off. So when he fires his round, that's a good time afterwards to go ahead and take him out, because we know we're not in danger and we can face him directly. So again, standing still, we can see that Max absorbs nearly 100% of the bullets that are fired at him. Strafing to the left and right, we seem to decrease this quite a bit, without having to go into a full shoot dodge. And while strafing, we can still fire. And somehow I tagged that guy. That's pretty good. Alright, so I'm just going to follow the tutorial here for a moment. And so an important thing to note is that if we want to decrease the probability of Max being hit even further, a good way to accomplish this is with the side roll, which looks like this. The side roll is pretty much done by pressing your standard jump button, but we're only going to press our strafing keys, and then we're going to go ahead and hit that spacebar. And now the thing about rolling is that you have to time it, because if you just spam your space or your jump button, you're going to get Max to do a jump that is straight up like this, and he kind of like breaks. It doesn't really help his probability of dodging the bullets that well. So you have to time it a little bit as far as the rolling. But the issue with rolling, so rolling works out the best when it comes to dodging bullets. Rolling works very, very well, and these guys just will not be able to hit me so long as I continue to roll. But the issue with rolling is that we can't fire while we are in a rolling animation. And even further than that, rolling is actually a type of bullet time shoot dodge. And what I mean by that is that it actually slightly slows down the game in the same way that this shoot dodge does. So if you think about the internal clock or the internal speed of the game, it constantly is slowing down as you roll. So over time, rolling far distances, while it may help you avoid the bullets, will not help you in a time attack sense of getting to the end of levels quickly. So with this, I like to use rolling. It's pretty important in some parts, but I like to use rolling when I'm coming around blind corners, when I know that there's a shotgun guy who's just waiting for me to come around the corner, and then I could just roll closer into him and take him out. Things like that. Rolling is used, but you don't want to overutilize rolling from point A to point B. And let's take care of that guy. Alright. So, to review, the fastest Max will be is when he's running forward. This is the highest speed we can attain. So when you're combing through levels, you don't want to let go of the forward movement of Max. You can strafe left to right. As we now know, strafing helps us avoid incoming rounds. But we don't want to stop and kind of play around and do things like that, even though, as I said, for instance, if I was trying to get to this back alley over here, and I knew that there was going to be guys back here, I could simply roll, avoid his first shot, and know that his rate of fire is now affected, so I can dodge his round safely and then take him out. And as far as the areas go, as to when to use rolling, is something that is learned once you memorize individual levels and things like that. I like to play around in the tutorial area quite a bit, usually, just to practice super jumps. And super jumps don't really vary at all. I can show you a few. So we have our standard jump that gives us that extra height there. And there's really only two other kinds of jumps, even though they're performed the same way. So this kind of jump is something you'll only see about once or twice throughout the run. But say I want to get on top of this back wall. There's a few instances where you'll have to do something like this. Okay, and that's essentially jumping and getting Max to turn around. Well, let's see if I can do it. That was close. Maybe I'm just not close enough to the wall. Or maybe I'm too close to the wall, is what I mean. Alright, so finally, you can see that should be a good indication on how super jumps can be sometimes. And basically, the reason you would do a jump like that is that Max is actually pretty free-flowing when he's in midair during a super jump. You can actually turn him pretty quickly. But there's going to be a few times where you're going to want to get on top of an object and you're going to be pushing pretty close like this, and you don't really want Max to jump into the wall because that might alter your progress. So it's actually easier to face away from the wall, and then once you attain the jump, turn into it. Alright, and that's kind of more of an advanced technique, because for the most part, as long as you can get the super jump, you'll be able to find a way onto the wall. And then even a good way to do it for beginners is to hit the bullet time. Once you hit the super jump, go ahead and hit that bullet time button, and you can guide Max pretty easily. Of course, that will cost you a little bit of time as well. And it's also a good indicator. Let me get an example here. Say I wanted to do a jump from this wall up here somewhere, but I don't want to fall into this area. Say it's a kill zone or something like that. So a good way to do this in real time during a run is to hit the bullet time as we attain our jump to make sure that we actually get that super jump, and it's going to look something like this. So I could see there I did not get this super jump, so I'm gonna use that time in the air to get back to my starting position with no repercussion. And there I can see I did get the super jump, so I can go ahead and exit bullet time and complete my jump. And this takes a bit of practice, but it will help you out in the long run. So to review with super jumps, you're going to go from a two-hand weapon to a one-hand weapon. Jump about one-third of a second after max. You hear that click of switching the weapons, and you should be able to do it with a bit of practice. A final type of super jump is when you have something that's blocking you overhead. Say these stairs weren't actually here and I wanted to get up onto the fire escape. And like I said, Max has a lot of mobility when he's midair. And so you're going to want to practice doing something along the lines of that. You can see I got the super jump there, but that blocked my momentum upward. So it's a good way to practice both the bullet time and moving max throughout the air, setting yourself up on these kinds of jumps. And pretty much everything else that comes in with the basic movement, you kind of just learn. You know, you learn from playing. But the big takeaway here is how to avoid enemy fire, or how to mitigate enemy fire. There's a lot of luck that's based into this. You can see I'm still taking a few shots here. There's a lot of guys around me. But know when to take your opportunity. Especially with these pump shotgun guys. Because he just fired, now he's going to have to wait. And I can time when is the right moment to turn and face him directly. Alright, so that's the basic tutorial on how to move around in the Max Payne speedrun. I'll be covering a lot of other tricks and glitches and exploits and more run-specific things in the video that follows, and we'll actually get started going through the game. Since most of the tricks in this game are quite specific to the circumstance of that the levels put you in, and a lot of this game has to come with memorizing the rooms, individual rooms, how many enemies are in the room, what type of weapons are they carrying, and things like that. But I hope you practice your super jumps and you get comfortable with them, because you're going to need them throughout the run, and we'll see that coming up. So, alright, I'll see you in part 1.